Here we go. See that? All right. Where is she? I was not going to say something. We're still in the Mishnah. In my numbering, it's Mishnah 5. And we're getting to the second half of this Mishnah. There's 2 more phrases that we could take a look at. This is Hillel's teachings. And we're up to, as I said, the third of the 4 statements that he has. So somebody has a translation to share with us, that would be great. We don't have any of our representatives of the Rami Shapiro one, but I don't remember that there was anything different, but who knows? Anyway, it's the 3rd clause. So it's after don't judge your friend until you get to their place. We talked about that. But now there's the next.
Pirkei Avot 5, is that what it is?
Yeah, I think you had a different numbering last week also. I think you're 4 maybe.
But it's in chapter 2, right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So okay, you have the translation, John. How about it?
Well, I don't I'm still trying to find it because I thought it was 4. He used to say, is that where we're starting? No.
Look at the one before that. Hillel says.
I'm in the wrong
The
place.
one after that.
I mean, Pirkei Avot 2.
Yeah. What do you have? He used to say
I
what?
have it, Rabbi, if you want it.
Right, but I want to
He
get
used to say, do his will,
the next
go it where
Mishnah.
your will.
Either the next Mishnah or the next half of that Mishnah.
Do not
Hillel
trust
says.
yourself until the day of your death. That one, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's part of the same one. Okay, so you want me to
Right after the day right after that one is don't judge your friend
Right,
until you
right,
get to the place.
right.
And now the next one. Go ahead.
Do not say something that cannot be understood, trusting that in the end it will be understood. Say not, when I shall have leisure, I shall study. Perhaps you will not have leisure.
Okay, so those are the last 2 of the statements. And Josie just joined us. So you have the Rami Shapiro translation. Okay, wait, but Geraldine, you want to say something? Go ahead.
Where are we? Mine doesn't say what he read.
I think most people have it as number 5.
What book is it? Are we in this? Which book are we in?
Gone with the Wind.
I don't know where we are reading. Sorry.
We're reading Pirkei Avot, chapter 2.
Okay.
Number 5.
Chapter 2, and we have a little bit of a difference. Some people have an edition that says it's Mishnah 4, and other people have the edition that says it's Mishnah 5.
Right.
They sometimes get divided up differently. So
Can I just add something? So mine is a little, just adds a little bit to what John just said. It says, and say not anything which cannot be understood at once in the hope that it will be understood in the end.
okay,
So it adds the at once. Yeah.
okay. And Geraldine, you wanted to add something. Helen, you found it?
I have
I'm
two.
looking.
All
All
right.
right.
What page is it?
This is the one with Hillel taught, right, Rabbi?
Right, yes,
Okay, so we're reading the third one in that list, or all of it?
yes, the third of it, the third one.
Do not judge your fellow human being.
No,
till-
that's the
fourth
next one
one.
after that.
Okay.
I thought I was going to save time and it didn't work. Go ahead.
Okay. Do not say it is not possible to understand this, for ultimately it will be understood.
Wow, this is so different.
Very different. Yes, okay.
The opposite of
Sort
Yeah,
of,
very-
yeah, from the
very
other
different.
direction, yes. And now Josie.
Shapiro says, do not abandon the new simply because it is new.
Are you sure?
Chapter 2, verse 5.
Mishnah 5. You have don't judge your friend until you get to their place, right?
Yeah, and the next line is do not abandon the new simply because it is new.
Okay, and then what?
Do not say when I am free, I will study, for perhaps you will never be free.
All right, so we're gonna have to do, maybe he has a little comment on that other, that translation. It is, a little bit more far afield than what
Yeah.
we've had until now. So we'll wait a minute, okay? Hold on to that.
All right, I have a comment. Okay.
Good. All right, so let's get to the literal words. The Hebrew as it's literally translated is still ambiguous. It says, Ve'al tomar, do not say, davar she'i efshar lishmoa, something that is impossible, something that is impossible to hear or to understand, shesofo lihishama, for in the end, it can be understood or it can be heard. Now, the problem with all of these words are you still don't know exactly, is it don't say something, etc., 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 or don't say this is something that blah, 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 right? So that's why we have two very different directions here going. One is you're the speaker and you are responsible for what you're saying, and you are being warned here about what the, how you should phrase what you're saying or something like that. And the other one is something has been said and now you're judging what it is that was said. Okay, so let's take the first one, right? Don't say, again, back to the first translation that we had. John, you want to read it one more time?
Yes.
Thank you.
Do not say something that cannot be understood, trusting that in the end it will be understood.
Okay,
Say not, but I shall have.
So that's so, and there's the word trusting is added also.
It's in quotes or
So
brackets.
right. So it's in. So the question is, what do I think is going to happen, or is the Mishnah telling us? Is Hillel telling us what's going to happen? That's also part of it. So let's take it first from the translation that as John read it. Don't say something that's impossible to be understood, trusting that eventually it will be understood. What would that mean? Why would somebody do that?
Well, you could interpret it that it's, like Churchill used to say, or said, don't be clever, hit things 3 times with a mighty whack, like just don't be clever, say things in a plain way. Don't assume people are going to read between the lines and understand what you have to say by paying a lot of attention. Be clear.
Okay, so let it be clear immediately, right? Anybody else want to chime in on that? Yeah,
What
Adam.
does it mean to keep an
Wait.
open-
Adam raised his hand.
Adam follows the rules.
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
It's just strikes me as we're sitting here, I mean, saying don't say something that can't be understood, hoping that it will be understood in the end, makes what we're doing here and in other classes, Talmud study and whatnot, somewhat problematic, because the whole point of this is that things aren't immediately evident and you kind of have to work through the meanings.
Right. In fact, I was going to say, push it a little bit further. This very statement violates the rule that the statement seems to be saying, since we have to break our heads here and spend a lot of time trying to unpack what exactly is this statement trying to say. So there's a certain irony right here. And of course, as you say, so much of what we do in studying Torah is about spending a lot of time to eventually try to unpack the meanings that are not available right away. So first Josie, then Sarita, then John, then Audrey, then anybody else. Okay. If you can remember that order, that's okay. Good. I think Josie, because you wanted to jump in before. Go ahead.
I just was thinking maybe it means keep an open mind. Don't, quickly make a judgment and then walk away from what might be some interesting new thoughts.
So that's okay. So again, we're going back and forth between the speaker and the listener, between the one who's pronouncing something and the one who's trying to hear it and process it. So I want to start first with the pronouncer, the person who's speaking, that this is some kind of instruction or warning about people that, have, they're saying things. So Hillel is saying, watch out the way you say it, etc., etc. Okay, so yeah, who is next? Sarita is next, go ahead.
So I'm thinking about how, we operate today sort of in sound bites. and we
Mm.
come up with like a slogan to stand for, our values and the action that we want taken, but that can be very misunderstood. So I'm, for instance, thinking about the notion defund the police, that, there's a whole understanding of what that means. But of course, some people take it to mean one thing, other people have taken it to mean something else and have, almost used it in, against, the concept. And so I think really being careful about how you frame things. Sometimes, clearly we need to be short sometimes, right? Because you can't say a whole paragraph. If you're,
I've heard that
but I think,
occasionally. People have told me
right.
that occasionally.
But we have to be careful because how we frame it, in a quick soundbite can in fact be misleading, negativized. So that's what's jumping into my head at the moment.
Okay, yeah. So I know, Audrey, you're in here somewhere. Are you next? No? Why not?
John, I come
Oh,
after
John is
John.
next.
Oh, go ahead. You can go, Audrey. Go ahead.
I kept track. Okay.
Very
You sure?
Yeah, I don't care.
Okay.
Go for it.
There's two things that occurred to me about this. One is in the kind of fast-paced world we're living in, it's like you have someone's attention at that moment. And like, you should just say what you mean and mean what you say, because that chance is probably not gonna, if you have someone who's listening, actively listening, it's smart to be clear.
Mm.
Because that is an opportunity missed if you don't do that. And probably that was true then as well. The other thing is that it has always been odd to me. Like when I have tried to read certain philosophers, they are so hard to access. And like I get I and thou, but that's it. That is it. I can't read that book. I have tried. I read the opening, the interpretation, and I thought I was so smart, but then I started to read. It's inaccessible. So what is the point of that? I don't know. I know that there's a point because it's so famous. The philosophers are so famous. So there's a listening and there's an audience for it and there's impact. But there's a downside because not everyone can understand what's being said. And I don't know why things need to be so inaccessible. So I'm hearing be accessible in this as well.
John.
Just to react quickly to Audrey, I think sometimes the problem with philosophy is you're talking about cognition with cognition. Like you lack the words, it's very difficult. It's like it's actually kind of parallels trying to explain something on a computer to somebody. You kind of sort of lack the shared lingo to be able to communicate effectively. But
those cribbage pieces.
At first I was thinking, well, maybe this is like, saying don't be evasive, like don't double speak or things like that. Don't speak with the intention of being evasive or with the intention of misleading. But there's a second half of the statement. Do not say something that cannot be understood, trusting at the end it will be understood. So I really think it's just about clarity. It's about say things simply. Don't assume people will read between the lines. I don't think it's because it's saying you're trusting that in the end it will be understood. So I don't think there's any nefarious intention related to this statement.
Okay, anybody else? All right, Lou.
Don't you have to take this along with the rest of that Mishnah? Don't separate yourself from the congregation. Don't trust yourself until the day of your death. Don't judge your fellow man until you're in his position. And this statement, which is, who knows when the end is, you better be upfront right at the beginning.
Okay, good. So you're trying to make those linkages instead of seeing them as discrete statements. And
Maybe we're dissecting too much.
Right, and then it's about the unfolding of time, things as they eventually develop. So yeah, Merle, you have to unmute. Hillel said, if you want to
Got
speak,
it.
you must
Okay.
unmute.
Okay, I'm sorry. sometimes I think that they're not necessarily trying to be obtuse. Some people think in a way they don't even realize that somebody else doesn't understand what they're saying. They're trying their best to explain it, but because of the nature of the way they think, it doesn't come out in a way that other people can understand. And it's not necessarily, I don't think they're necessarily trying to be obtuse. It's just that we don't all think alike.
Right.
Don't have the same experiences.
John, then Sarita.
We give ourselves little gaskets of safety all the time, especially when discussing things that are unpleasant, right? It's hard to say sometimes, I don't think this is right, and this is why your perception is not correct in my view. So it's hard to do that. It's uncomfortable. So a lot of times when you're talking about something difficult, people will say something and not go farther, hoping you get what they're talking about. And I think that's what this is warning you against. Don't because that can cause all kinds of miscommunication to happen. That if you're going to say something's a problem, you need to outline why it's a problem very specifically. Otherwise, there's too much room to make inferences and assumptions, and your own biases will come into place. And you know, if you were to say somebody did something bad, you can't just say, well, someone did something bad, I can't really go into it. You need to say what it is, and so that it can be evaluated by other people in the conversation.
Sarita.
Yeah, that's good, yeah.
In reaction to what Errol was saying, you know, if you're going to talk, are you talking just because you want to talk and you want to hear yourself, or are you talking because you want to convey information to somebody else? So it's important to talk with the other and keep the other person in mind, and also recognize that they might not have the same, they might not approach the topic from the same background that you do. So you just need to keep the listener and the listener's needs in mind if you truly want to be understood and convey information.
Yeah, so I think that a lot of people have offered some important insights that are, I think, cognizant of the context of the speech. Speech doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? And not only in a text, in a paragraph, but also the context of speaking is we speak to, toward. We are, there's somebody that we are talking to. And that means, and this is so appropriate for coming after yesterday's Torah reading, this is so appropriate for the Torah reading of Tazria and Metzora, which the rabbis turned into a place to meditate on speech ethics. And speech ethics is not just, don't use speech to hurt somebody else, but this question that we're, batting around, what is my ethical responsibility when I speak to another person in how I speak? Is there an ethical responsibility to try to be understood? Is there an ethical responsibility to say things softly so that the person doesn't get upset? So do I then not be so explicit, not so clear? Is there a time for a person to say something that will be immediately understood, but as a result, close down the possibilities of the other person thinking through things themselves? So when do you have to actually sort of leave things open in a way that will guide or enable the other person to think through the things and come to the conclusion on their own, and then they'll own it? So many times when you think you've said something absolutely compelling, I happen to know this from personal experience, the clarity and the force of my conviction and expression ends up backfiring, so that it doesn't achieve what it's meant to achieve. So the ambiguity of this statement is going back all the way now to Adam's point and to the whole question of language itself. Is it really possible to have transparent language? Is it really possible to have statements that are so crystal clear that nobody ever has a question about what it means. That was a certain kind of theory or fantasy once upon a time. In philosophy, there's a term called hermeneutics. Hermeneutics means making sense of a statement or a text. So for a while, there were people that used to think, look, there's clear speech, and then there's murky speech. And then people started arguing there is no such thing as clear speech. There is only murky speech, because everybody brings their own, assumptions, needs, and so on. So they're going to hear it differently. Remember, we talked about this. Is this statement talking about the person talking, or is this statement talking about the person listening? They both participate in that speech act. Yesterday's Torah reading is a classic example of the Torah working very hard to describe things that in the end, nobody knows what the heck the Torah is talking about. So the language is straining to talk about if the lesion looks a little bit like this, if the hair does this, then it's this way. But if it does that, and we can read the words a million times over, and yet it's words. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that come into play to make the meaning out of those words. The meaning is not glued to the words, and then we either disregard it or we get it. Often. I mean, sometimes it's actually clear. Sometimes it really is clear, but that's because of the context, and it's because of a shared language or because of a shared sense of assumptions. And again, that comes back to the ethics. The ethics is, how am I relating to that person that I'm either listening to or talking to? What am I trying to do? There's another way to read this, which some people have and so with philosophers, I agree. There are philosophers that there becomes a culture of obscurity, right? The more obscure you are, the smarter you sound. But then there is what Merle is talking about. It's really hard to talk about this. And I think I'm being clear. And I think by adding this new term that nobody has ever, thought of before, I'm finally, pushing the flash cube and illuminating something. But for the other person, it goes, I don't know what the heck you're talking about. So it's really, it's a very hard.
Oh, no. Even with the new thing?
We lost you.
Hello?
Lost the rabbi. We lost you for that.
You did?
Yeah, please repeat what you just said, because you froze.
My internet connection is unstable.
Oh, I thought it was me.
No, it's always me. It's always me. So somehow or other, sometimes it doesn't go.
Oops. We just lost you again.
John, you had a comment. What was your comment? While we wait.
All right, here we go again. All right. So it's just not to keep on belaboring this. What I was talking about was the difficulty of assessing the context that a person is in, either as a listener or as a hearer, and the striving to be clear for some people excruciating, and for some people it's actually a great cover, for their own sense of what they want to do. Yeah, John.
Maybe there's also a level at which this is saying, just don't say something if you can't say it clearly. Like, just keep your mouth shut. I mean, all the time I have to talk about, when I meet a new director and we want to talk about the lighting, I say, well, my only rule about talking about lighting is I never want to talk about lighting, because you can't make a picture in someone's head. It's like describing a painting to someone. Are they going to see the painting? No. It's like, it's better to talk about the story and the characters and all that stuff. So I've learned to just not say it, because it always 100% of the time. When I was young, you say, oh, it's going to do this, I'm going to do that, it's going to be backlight, it's going to be this. And then you get to the theater and go, that's not what you told me, right? Because they saw a different picture. So it's better just not say it. Better to not say it at all.
So the problem with that, of course, is that we would all just sit in silence forever. Matisse was is one of my heroes, one of the greatest painters ever. And he writes beautifully about art. His writings are really a treasure. And he writes, a painter should actually cut out their tongue so that they shouldn't talk about their art.
Hallelujah.
So, yeah. So, but then, what about a poet? Is a poet not supposed to, say their poem or write their poem because language is so inadequate? What would, is Shakespeare the worst writer who ever lived? Because, every time you read one of his things, you start, scratching your head. So we keep on butting up against the problem of the necessity of language, and yet how thick the morass is that we step into when we get into language. Other people read this as actually a specific kind of language, and that's secrets. Don't say things that you think will not be heard, because eventually they will be heard, right? And this could go into whether it's intimate secrets, whether it's secrets about another person, whether it's rumors about whatever. Don't think that you can control the words. Once they come out of your mouth, they're out there, and they will go out beyond that little space that you were in. So then it's also about time. In the unfolding of time, this will actually be heard. And maybe by people that you don't want to hear, whether it's the authorities, whether it's you're trying to plot something, whether it's, again, some kind of intimate secret that you don't want anybody else to know, but you need to get it out. Whether it's dirt on somebody else that you feel you can share with this person, but not with anybody else. It's going to come out. It's going to come out. So watch out then what it is that you say. Don't say anything that can't then withstand the light of day, is the way some people write, read this. We're at the end of our time for today. And we hardly got there. We didn't even get to Rabbi Shapiro's enigmatic statement. So I look forward to joining next week and moving forward after we maybe wrap up a little bit more. Okay?
Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay, Zygazint, everybody.
Thank you.
Go on.